The courtroom fell silent. Cameras froze in mid-shot. Every breath, every whisper, every click of a pen suddenly stopped as all eyes turned toward Tiny Harris. Her face, once familiar from stages, red carpets, and magazine covers, was now streaked with tears. For weeks, she had carried the weight of rumors, betrayal, and secrets that had torn through her world like a storm. And in that moment, it was too much. The mask cracked, the composure shattered, and for the first time, the world saw Tiny not as a celebrity or a wife or a brand, but as a woman who had been pushed past her breaking point. They say she whispered just one word before breaking down. Why? It wasn't a cry for the cameras, not a performance for the media. It was a genuine plea from someone who could no longer understand how love had turned into humiliation. Because sitting just a few feet away was the man she trusted most, the man who once promised her loyalty, protection, and partnership. And a few rows behind, quietly watching everything unfold, sat Kandi Burruss, her face unreadable, her body still, her presence almost chilling. What happened that day in court wasn't just about legal documents or accusations. It was something far deeper, a reckoning of love, betrayal, and manipulation that had been building quietly for months. And according to new leaks that surfaced only hours after the hearing, this wasn't a simple misunderstanding between lovers. The betrayal was planned, executed, and orchestrated. And the person responsible may have been closer to Tiny than she ever imagined. The silence in that courtroom was unlike anything reporters had ever seen. Veteran journalists, people used to scandals, chaos, and celebrity meltdowns, sat frozen, unable to move their pens. The air felt heavy, charged with the kind of tension that can't be staged. At the center of it all sat Tiny, gripping the edge of the witness stand. Her hands trembled as she tried to steady herself. Her eyes were red and swollen, her voice barely a whisper. This wasn't the strong, confident woman the public knew. This was someone broken by a truth too cruel to accept. Across from her, T.I. sat rigid in his chair. His lawyer leaned in, whispering something urgently, but he didn't respond. His eyes stayed locked on the table before him, as if looking Tiny in the eye would burn him alive. This was a man who had always been composed, powerful, in control, but not today. Today, the control was gone. The silence between them spoke louder than any testimony could. And then there was Kandi Burruss, sitting quietly in the second row, calm and expressionless. She watched every movement, every tear, every glance exchanged between the two people at the center of the storm. For weeks, her name had been whispered in gossip blogs and group chats. Some called her the other woman, others said she was the mastermind behind it all. But in that courtroom, her silence said everything, and nothing at all. Outside, chaos erupted. Within minutes of the hearing's end, social media was on fire. Fans, bloggers, and gossip pages were dissecting every second of the live stream. Posts flooded in from every direction. T.I. cheated on Tiny with Kandi. Kandi set Tiny up. Tiny's tears are for show. Every theory contradicted the next, but that didn't matter. What mattered was that everyone was watching and everyone had an opinion. But behind all the noise, those who actually knew the three of them said something completely different. They said this wasn't a publicity stunt. This wasn't about fame or views. This was personal. This was raw. And it was spiraling faster than anyone could control. Inside the courtroom, before the world outside knew what had just happened, Tiny had turned to T.I., wiped her tears, and whispered just 4 words that echoed in the silence. "You promised me." The words were soft, but they landed like thunder. A few reporters scribbled them down immediately, knowing they had just witnessed the emotional peak of something much bigger than a lawsuit. By the time the judge called for order, it was already too late. The story had escaped the courtroom walls and was racing toward every phone screen in the country. Hours later, the internet exploded. Clips of Tiny's breakdown were everywhere. Fans replayed the footage in slow motion, analyzing every facial expression, every whisper, every glance at T. Some claimed she was heartbroken. Others said she was angry. A few even accused her of acting. But no one could deny that what they were seeing was real pain. And then, just when it seemed the dust might settle, came the bombshell. An audio recording surfaced online, posted by an Atlanta gossip blog with over 1 million followers. In the clip, a woman's voice, allegedly Kandi Burruss, could be heard saying, "We told him it would blow up, but he didn't listen. Now she knows everything." If real, that meant one thing. The betrayal wasn't an accident. It was planned. Within hours, the clip went viral. News anchors debated it. Podcasts dissected it. Twitter threads claimed to find proof it was Kandi's voice. Kandi's PR team immediately released a statement calling the recording fake, a deep fake generated for clicks. But for most people, the denial came too late. The damage was already done. The public had made up its mind. Meanwhile, back at his studio, T.I. was pacing the floors. According to people close to him, he hadn't slept in days. One friend claimed he spent the night replaying the courtroom footage on loop, unable to look away from Tiny's tears. "He keeps saying there's something in her eyes he can't unsee," the friend told reporters. "He's not the same person. He knows he messed up, but I don't think even he knows how deep this goes." For years, T.I. had carefully built his reputation, a family man, a businessman, a legend in his own right. But now that image was slipping away, replaced by whispers of betrayal and deceit. Every headline, every tweet, every reaction chipped away at the brand he had spent decades protecting. Tiny, meanwhile, had gone silent. Her lawyer refused to comment, her publicist stopped answering calls. Her social media went dark, but those closest to her painted a very different picture. According to one friend, Tiny wasn't hiding, she was planning. She's writing everything down, names, dates, conversations. She's building her own case. She doesn't believe T.I. did all of this on his own. She thinks someone wanted to destroy them both, and Kandi might just be the key. That theory spread quickly online. Fans became digital detectives overnight, scouring old interviews, photos, and social media posts for clues. They slowed down videos, zoomed in on hand gestures, analyzed cryptic captions. Some claim they found proof that Kandi and T.I. had been meeting privately weeks before the scandal broke, under the guise of a business project that was never officially announced. Others pointed to an old charity event photo where the two were seen sharing a quiet conversation away from the crowd. Suddenly, every memory, every picture, every moment from the past became evidence in the court of public opinion. By midnight, hashtags like Tiny Breakdown, T.I. Betrayal, and Kandi Leak dominated social media. News outlets ran wild with headlines like "Atlanta's power couple collapses in scandal" and "Love, Lies, and Loyalty, the trial that shook Hollywood." The story wasn't just trending, it was consuming the entertainment world. But those who had seen what went on behind the scenes said one chilling thing. None of this was supposed to happen like this. Someone had planned every detail. The leaks, the footage, even the emotional explosion in the courtroom. Every piece fit too perfectly to be random. And then the final twist. As the sun rose over Atlanta, a new screenshot began circulating online. It was a text message allegedly sent from T's phone to an unknown number the night before Tiny's arrest. The message read, "It's done. Make sure she never finds out." No one could confirm if it was real, but at that point, the truth didn't matter. The internet had already chosen its villain. For Tiny, the message was the final blow. For T.I., it was the last nail in a reputation that once seemed unbreakable. And for Kandi, it was either the ultimate setup or the perfect crime. In the days that followed, Tiny disappeared from the public eye. No statements, no interviews, no explanations. But insiders said she was in quiet reflection, piecing together the truth and deciding her next move.
Some say she's preparing to speak publicly, not just about the betrayal, but about what she believes was a calculated attempt to destroy everything she built. And as for T.I., he's been seen less and less. His studio sessions canceled, his public appearances quietly withdrawn. Friends say he's a man haunted by guilt, by regret, and by the realization that the truth might never come fully to light. However, at exactly 11 that morning, everything froze. Screens across the world lit up with the same headline: DNA leak exposes Hollywood's darkest secret. The file was anonymous, untraceable, and stamped with an official hospital seal. On that single page, typed in cold black letters, it read, "In that moment, years of smiles, red carpets, and reality show laughter collapsed under the weight of a single revelation." The internet didn't just react, it detonated. Hashtags like DNA betrayal and Kandi exposed erupted across social media, turning timelines into battlefields. Fans gasped, journalists scrambled, and influencers dissected every word like forensic scientists. Within minutes, Atlanta, the empire T.I. had built, became ground zero for one of the most shocking betrayals in modern celebrity history.
While the world was talking, Tiny Harris was breaking. Witnesses say she was on set when the leak hit. The moment her eyes met that DNA report, her face drained of color. Her hands trembled. The room fell silent. Then, without warning, she screamed, a sound that split the air. Crew members froze as cameras kept rolling. Within seconds, she collapsed. Paramedics rushed in. What had been her world, her marriage, her motherhood, her peace, shattered in front of millions. And behind that heartbreak was something far darker than anyone imagined. A web of lies worth millions, spun across 2 decades, sealed with signatures, silence, and blood. Within hours, Tiny filed a $300 million lawsuit, not for fame, not for money, but for the truth itself. Fraud, emotional destruction, betrayal of life. Her case wasn't just about deception, it was about identity, a stolen bond between mother and child. The courtroom became a war zone. Paparazzi camped outside, fans gathered in waves, and every lens pointed toward one haunting question. Who is King Harris? Really? This wasn't another cheating scandal or PR stunt gone wrong. This was something deeper, a bloodline war. A legacy rewritten in ink and sealed in DNA. For years, the world had adored their story, the rapper, the singer, the perfect family. But beneath the filtered photos and TV smiles lay a secret buried so deep it took almost 20 years to surface. Sources later revealed that back in 2004, a black box deal worth $2 million was struck. Birth records were tampered with, hospital logs rewritten, and the truth, the real identity of a child, was erased with surgical precision. No one was supposed to know, but secrets like that don't stay buried forever. Then came the twist that flipped the story from scandal to crime. An ex-hospital employee stepped forward, her voice trembling, her identity hidden behind shadow and static. She said, "I saw the papers change. I saw the hush money passed across the table. They told us the truth could never leave that room." The nurse had proof, dated logs, signatures, the kind of evidence that couldn't be denied. It all pointed to one thing. T.I.'s own management team had allegedly paid to erase Kandi Burruss's name from the original birth certificate, replacing it with another. What began as friendship and fame had turned into a pact of deceit. Tiny's response was immediate and fierce. She stood before cameras, her hands gripping that DNA report like it was both a weapon and a wound. Her voice didn't tremble. Her statement was short and devastating. "They didn't just lie to me, they stole a part of my soul." Those words echoed through every corner of the internet. Within hours, her pain became a movement. Fans rallied behind her. Hashtags like #JusticeForTiny flooded the web. Comment sections turned into battlegrounds of empathy and outrage.
Even celebrities, once silent, began posting cryptic messages about truth always finding the light. By the next morning, the courthouse looked like a war zone. Police barricades barely held back the ocean of fans. Reporters shouted questions over flashing lights. Some were there to support Tiny, others came to witness history. Inside, her legal team began unveiling their evidence: DNA records, altered birth logs, payment receipts. Every document slammed onto the table felt like a gunshot echoing through the courtroom. When the number $300 million was announced, even the judge seemed shaken. But Tiny wasn't fighting for the money. She was fighting for every night she lay awake wondering what was wrong, for every whisper behind her back, for every piece of her identity that had been stolen. As the truth rippled outward, everything T.I. and Kandi Burruss had built began to crumble. Endorsements vanished, sponsorships froze, TV appearances were canceled overnight. Their empire, once untouchable, now stood on the edge of collapse. What was once their pride had turned into evidence. And then, another twist. A second whistleblower came forward during a live stream, voice cracking with emotion. She claimed that this wasn't the first time someone had tried to expose the truth. In 2017, she said, another DNA report surfaced, but was buried under a $20 million hush settlement. The comment section exploded. "How deep does this go?" she wrote. "How many people were paid to stay silent?" The deeper the world dug, the darker it got. 3 days after the leak, the courtroom reached its breaking point. The judge called an unexpected witness, a woman in her late 50s. The room fell silent. She walked slowly to the stand, clutching an old, yellowed file. It was the head nurse from the night King Harris was born. She adjusted her glasses and spoke in a whisper that carried through every corner of the courtroom. "I was there when the records were switched. They paid us to make it disappear." Gasps rippled through the crowd. The nurse opened her folder. Inside was the original birth record, untouched by time. And there, in clear ink, was the name Kandi Burruss, listed as the biological mother.
Forensic experts confirmed it within minutes. The document was real. The deception ran deep. Tiny rose from her seat, her voice calm but sharp as glass. "You both stole from me," she said, locking eyes with T.I. and Kandi. "But you will never steal my strength." The courtroom erupted. Reporters scrambled for quotes. Fans cried in the hallways. For the first time, the world wasn't watching a celebrity feud. It was witnessing a reckoning. Outside, the world was on fire. Protesters held banners reading "Truth over Fame." News anchors called it the betrayal of the decade. Talk shows debated morality, power, and the cost of silence. Old clips of T.I. and Kandi laughing on stage now played on repeat, not as entertainment, but as evidence. And just when the chaos reached its peak, a new leak dropped, this time an audio file. The voice was unmistakable. T.I., confident and cold. "She'll never find out," he said. "We buried it too deep." The internet went silent, then erupted in rage. That line became the headline of every major outlet within hours. The world didn't need proof anymore, it had confession. That night, Atlanta didn't sleep. Helicopters hovered over celebrity mansions, paparazzi camped outside driveways. Every streetlight seemed to flicker under the weight of the truth. T.I.'s team went dark. Kandi refused interviews. Their silence only fueled the storm. Meanwhile, Tiny stood at her window, the DNA report clutched in her hands, not as a symbol of pain anymore, but as a weapon of justice. Kandi, on the other hand, has returned to social media, carefully curating her image, posting cryptic messages about rising above negativity and the truth always winning. But every post she makes is flooded with comments, some defending her, most accusing her. Whether she's innocent or guilty almost doesn't matter anymore. Her name is forever tied to the scandal. The courtroom that once held so much noise, emotion, and pain now sits empty, but the echoes of that day still linger. In headlines, in fan theories, in the hearts of everyone who watched it unfold. The silence may have returned to the room, but the world outside hasn't stopped talking since. Was Tiny Harris truly betrayed by the man she loved? Was T.I. manipulated into a scandal he couldn't escape? Or was this all part of a much larger game, one built on power, jealousy, and control? The truth, as always, hides somewhere in the chaos. This was more than a courtroom meltdown. It was a public unraveling of loyalty, love, and trust. And whether justice ever finds its way into the story or not, one thing is certain: nothing will ever be the same again. If you've made it this far, I want to know what you think. Was T.I. really guilty of betraying Tiny? Or is there someone else behind all of this? Someone pulling the strings from the shadows? Let's talk in the comments. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more deep dive breakdowns, and turn on notifications so you never miss the truth behind the headlines.